Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology. And this is a weekly forecast and a discussion of current events and the second Capricorn full moon. So, loosely, we're talking about July 15th through the 21st as a pivotal week. But of course, we can't talk about July 15th and the Mars Uranus conjunction without talking about what happened over the weekend. Of course, just jumping right in, what I mean is the assassination attempt of former President Trump and the way that Mars and Uranus coming together like this can absolutely be what we saw. We have the warrior with the radical, rebellious, hungry for revolution, and definitely happy to take extreme measures, Uranus. So they're egging each other on. And right, that was nail on the head. Now, this comes at an interesting time, obviously, because this presidential race feels very unstable, to say the least. This event casts Trump in the light of victimhood, which he is very good at manipulating and feeds into his self-dramatization in this way. And this is also coming on the eve of the Republican National Convention. It just changes the story a little bit. And there's a whole bunch of things that are coming up around gun violence, around global violence, around how everyone can come out with sympathy for Trump and a condemnation of this while we're supplying weapons that are killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. And this, we're heading into some dicier astrology this fall, especially as we get towards September and October, we head back into eclipse season. And so it's just, I know everybody is feeling a little bit hopeless or helpless about the candidates that we have and Biden refusing to step down. And I am just not necessarily thinking that who is on the ballot right now is going to be who is on the ballot in November. We're just seeing that. Obviously, we're still in early days about this assassination attempt, and it's still pretty unclear what was happening. I will say, though, that the gentleman who did the assassination attempt, I noticed immediately when it said that he was 21 years old. 2021 is when we encounter our first Uranus square. So that is when transiting Uranus forms a 90-degree angle and squares our natal Uranus. And that is generally a huge event of some sort, a huge kind of misstep that changes the course of our life. And now, in his experience, obviously, he is deceased, so that is a huge thing. But this event is happening for a lot of Gen Z that was born, many of them with Uranus in Aquarius. And so Uranus's move through Taurus has been there for your Uranus squares, and that these are often more radical. Because we're looking at Uranus squares within fixed signs and a natal Uranus in Aquarius, which is already just more than happy to say nothing that we're doing makes sense and we have to change everything. And then Uranus and Taurus really has to grapple with what is possible and what is available and the ways that we hit breaking points around there and the ways that when we feel helpless, violence makes a lot more sense as an act of desperation. That is the Mars-Uranus conjunction right? Mars can be very frustrated in Taurus, especially if it's trying to build inertia and that keeps getting slowed down. Some kind of radical stuff happening there. On Tuesday, the 16th, while there's not kind of headline transits, what we have on Tuesday, the 16th is the entrance into the retrograde shadow for Mercury. We enter the pre-shadow, and Mercury will be in the pre-shadow from July 16th until it stations retrograde on August 4th. And then it will be Cazimi on August 18th, finally direct on the 28th, and it will exit the post-shadow at 9/11. We are really into the next 2 months of a Mercury retrograde cycle, and a Mercury retrograde cycle in Leo. And this will be interesting politically as well. So Mercury is actually going to station retrograde in Virgo, but go back into Leo. It is going to be going back and forth over Trump's ascendant as part of this process. But a Mercury retrograde in Leo is very much an eat your words transit, because Mercury in Leo is a little bit bombastic, is maybe a little bit prone to exaggeration for dramatic flair. I am definitely on the hook for this one as a natal Mercury in Leo. And so the way that we are thinking of ourselves and the role that we're taking in the story that's unfolding, both in our personal and collective lives, is really at stake here. And in 2024, we have all the Mercury retrogrades and fire signs, which means they're fast moving, they're fast mistakes. We are churning and retelling the story and moving from thing to thing. And the Mercury retrograde in Leo wants to find the answer, wants to be solidified in its archetypal role. And this is going to involve some costume changes, right? Mercury dips into Virgo, says, oh man, I did not get that quite right. And then retrogrades. So we can expect starting on the 16th, probably things will need to get rescheduled, things will be arranged, things will take longer than they normally take. And so we're just taking a breath and being patient with those things. And when we build in the flexibility, then they don't disrupt the whole project, even when the project needs to slow down or something has been forgotten. I think Mercury retrogrades are a good time to travel, not because it makes travel easier, but because it's this kind of brain break from autopilot, which is really the gift of Mercury retrogrades, is that everything that has functioned and this just kind of assumption way of this is what we do, this is how we do it, I don't think about it, I'm just doing it. When Mercury is in retrograde, things don't work. And so we have to think about how and why we're doing things the way that we do. On Thursday, the sun sextiles Uranus. So we will get a little bit of energy. It's a busy week. It's a frenetic week building up towards the full moon. Stuff is happening quickly. All this juice from Uranus is jumbling it up. And with entering the pre-shadow of the retrograde, right, we just have more energy to make mistakes faster. On Saturday, the 20th, Mars enters Gemini. So this Mars, I'm really watching this transit for a couple of reasons. We've moved away from the biggest transit of Mars in Taurus, which was, of course, that conjunction with Uranus. Now, Mars in Gemini brings up some interesting things because, for one, Gemini tends to be the sign of social media, so getting pretty contentious. The other thing is that Mars is moving starting to slow down. So it's going to spend a long time in Gemini. It's going to be in Gemini until September. Get an exact date. Yeah, until September 4th. So we have about a month and a half, and Mars went retrograde in Gemini in 2022, 2023. And so that was when we saw Musk take over Twitter, now X. We saw the kind of issues around social media and fighting there. And so those things should come up again. I'm also thinking about this Mars transiting Gemini this time because I have a child that was born with Mars and Gemini. And so this will be her first Mars return. And when people talk about the terrible twos, this is the development of an independent sense of will that often coincides with Mars, with the first Mars return. So this will be the first time that Mars is back in Gemini since my child was born. And so it'll be interesting to see where that happens. Mars goes into Gemini, and then we have the second Capricorn full moon on Sunday, the 21st. It happens in the very last degree, and the anaretic degree of Capricorn. It coincides with Mars trining Pluto and Mercury squaring Uranus, and the sun and the full moon in general, and the sun will be in a trine to Neptune. So there is a lot going on here. How to break it all down? I think there is a good chance that we will see some movement on the Biden situation. Is just my sense of things, because what we have is Mercury squaring Uranus. That tends to be surprise communication, a big announcement, something that was unexpected. We have the sun, which represents the king, trining Neptune and the very last degree of Pisces. And that Neptune can have to do with letting go or dissolving. I think it would be a beautiful thing to let go under in a kind of changing of the guard. We have Mars trining Pluto, which could be this kind of this flow of power from, and a real looking towards the future and what can be done. And there will probably be a lot of press around that and a lot of social media coverage. And so that could be right around there. This full moon is interesting too, because it's our second full moon in Capricorn. And when we look back to a month ago around the summer solstice, where we were and what we thought was going to be happening is very different for a lot of us. And so that was our first culmination of this Capricorn full moon, what we thought we had to be doing. The summer solstice in so many ways is this like mid-year check-in of, okay, how are we doing on all of our projects? How far have we come? And then the emotional processing of this Cancer season and the things that have happened on the personal level and a collective level, right? Now we are checking in a different way, maybe with a value shift of, okay, that's what I thought I needed to evaluate myself on. That's what I thought I was comparing myself against. And now I have all of this more heart-centered knowledge. Hopefully I've got in touch with my body and the wisdom of my body and my heart. And so I can contextualize things differently. And this full moon can show me this other piece. This is also the first Cancer season that we have had in over 17 years and over 16 years, where Pluto has not been in Capricorn opposing Cancer season. And so I think, right, there has been a kind of emotional release for a tenderizing piece that we've experienced, and not bracing for that Pluto and Capricorn to steamroll us with the strength of the establishment and the institutions. While they're still there and we're still working with that, and still going to retrograde in September into October back into Capricorn, and we're going to see another face of that. Right now, we're beholding all of that expanse of Capricorn in this post-Plutonian transit vibe, and getting to know that space, and also the Cancer space in a new way, because it is not plagued by Pluto. And then on Monday, the 22nd, we'll feel a really stark change because the sun is going to enter Leo, the sign of its rulership. And of course, as I've been saying, any of the planets entering the fixed signs right now come immediately into a hard aspect with Pluto. And the sun opposite Pluto again, right? We've got our king opposite Pluto, death, transformation, shifts in power, right? Again, I think there could be some kind of announcement about things shifting in rulerships. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe it won't be Biden. Maybe it will show up somewhere else in the world. But there's a lot of vibes around surprising transformations. And so next week we will be in Leo season. What we're looking at in Leo season is a number of things. We are going to have Mercury and Virgo. We are going to have a prolonged Mars-Jupiter conjunction. We are going to have a Mars-Saturn square. We are going to have a Mercury retrograde. Complicated times ahead, but as long as you're safe, pretty interesting to watch. And if you're not, we are sending good vibes to you. I'm still looking for Saturn return stories, so please email me if you want to talk about this. I would love to hear your experiences with Saturn and talk to you on an episode or on an audio only podcast. And also my books are open through September. I would love to check in, work with you on relationships or how to move in this crazy world, or processing loss or transitions of all kind. And if payment is an issue, you can always reach out to me. We can work something out. Okay. I hope you have a good week, and yeah, keep your notebooks out, taking notes about this exciting and transitional time, and I will see you next time.